A young man falls from a window, declared dead. An apostle leans over him, and moments later, he's alive again. Divine miracle or early medical resuscitation? Prepare to unravel the enigma of Eutychus' resurrection. Faith, science, and a mystery almost 2 millennia old. The depth of Eutychus' enigma begins to unfold as we transport ourselves to its detailed context. We are in Troas, a bustling port city in ancient Asia Minor. Around the year 57 Paul, one of the pillars of early Christianity, was on his third and final major missionary journey. He was due to depart the next day, which imbued the farewell meeting with the local Christian community with a sense of urgency and significant emotional weight. It wasn't just another sermon. It was a moment of communion, final teaching, and perhaps a definitive goodbye, amplifying the intensity of the occasion. The chosen venue was an upper room, likely the third floor of a spacious house, common for constructions of that era. The atmosphere in this environment is a crucial detail. The biblical text explicitly mentions the presence of many lamps. While this lighting was vital for the meeting that stretched into the night, it also created a stuffy, warm, and poorly ventilated environment. Oil lamps consumed oxygen and released smoke and heat, making the air heavy and thin, especially with a crowded congregation. The meeting stretched on intensely. Paul spoke for hours on end, driven by the fervor of his message and the awareness that he might not see those brethren again. This prolonged preaching, though spiritually enriching, created a physically exhausting environment. The natural fatigue that accumulated as the hours passed, the late hour of the night, the prolonged monotony of continuous speech, and the dense, oxygen-deprived atmosphere of the room created the perfect conditions for anyone's attention to waver. It is in this setting of deep spiritual dedication and, paradoxically, a physically challenging environment that Eutychus, a young man present there, becomes the involuntary protagonist of one of the most intriguing accounts in the New Testament. Understanding these environmental and temporal factors is fundamental to analyzing the nature of the event that followed. The core of the mystery and the turning point of the narrative rests on the unquestionable confirmation of Eutychus' death. As Paul continued his intense preaching, with the night inexorably advancing, Eutychus, likely having long struggled against sleep and accumulated fatigue, finally succumbed. He was sitting on the edge of a window, perhaps seeking a breath of fresh air in a desperate attempt to stay awake, or simply finding support for his exhausted body. The inevitable happened. Sleep completely overcame him. He lost his balance and fell from the third story. The sound of the impact on the ground must have been terrifying and instantly silenced the sermon, transforming the atmosphere of devotion into a commotion of horror. The scene that followed was one of immediate panic and dramatic confirmation. The horrified crowd rushed to the young man's side. The verdict, delivered by the eyewitnesses, was unanimous and distressing. They picked him up dead. This was not a mere assumption by frightened laypeople. It was the collective perception of individuals who, though lacking modern medical knowledge, were certainly familiar with the visible and undeniable signs of life and death in that era. They would have observed the absence of breathing, the lack of a pulse, the cadaverous pallor, the complete inertia of the body, and most likely, evident signs of trauma resulting from a fall from such a height. It is crucial to note that Luke, the author of the book of Acts, was a physician by profession. His inclusion of the phrase "already dead" is significant. He did not write "almost dead," "unconscious," or "appeared dead," but rather a final and unquestionable state. The fall from a third story, combined with the absence of any apparent vital signs, led to the conclusion that Eutychus was, in fact, lifeless according to everyone who witnessed the scene. It is this explicit declaration of death that elevates the event to the status of a miracle for believers. Had there been any doubt about the young man's condition, the magnitude of his return to life would be significantly diminished. The meticulous description in the biblical text leaves no room for doubt regarding the perception of those present. For them, death was a consummated and tragic fact. The essence of the mystery and the point of greatest debate lies in Paul's immediate action after Eutychus' fall and the declaration of his death. Upon hearing the commotion and the confirmation that the young man lay lifeless, the apostle did not hesitate. He promptly descended from the third floor, exhibiting remarkable calmness and authority amidst the general despair. His reaction was not one of panic, nor of lengthy prayers or complex rituals. Instead, the action was direct, physical, and resolute. He fell upon Eutychus' body, embracing him. Then, he made a surprising and conviction-filled statement. "Do not be alarmed, for his life is in him." This seemingly simple phrase is the key to multiple and divergent interpretations. For most religious interpreters, and for the Christian faith, this scene is irrefutable proof of a miracle of resurrection. It is a clear and powerful demonstration of God's divine power operating through Paul, illustrating God's capacity to transcend the natural laws. In this perspective, life returns to the body through supernatural intervention, reaffirming the apostle's spiritual authority and God's power over life and death. From this viewpoint, seeking a rational or scientific explanation would be to distort or diminish the supernatural and miraculous nature of the event. Paul's declaration would not be an observation, but a prophecy instantly fulfilled, restoring life to someone who was dead. However, Luke's meticulous account raises an intriguing question for analytical minds. Could Paul, perhaps by divinely inspired intuition or by empirical knowledge that transcends what we would expect from medicine of that era, have performed a form of cardiopulmonary resuscitation or early first aid maneuvers? At that time, there was no formal knowledge about the circulatory and respiratory systems as we have today, nor standardized resuscitation techniques. Yet, the description fell upon him, and the act of embracing him can be interpreted through a modern lens as actions that could generate chest compressions. This maneuver, even if rudimentary, could potentially restore circulation in an individual in reflex cardiorespiratory arrest or in a state of deep syncope induced by trauma or severe hypoxia. If Eutychus was in a state of apparent death, such as a profound faint caused by hypoxia, or from severe shock, resulting from the fall that led to respiratory arrest, a quick and vigorous physical intervention could, in fact, restore breathing and circulation. Paul's statement, then, would be the confirmation of the return of vital signs or consciousness, and not necessarily a resurrection from absolute zero. The ambiguity of Eutychus' death, whether it was definitive or merely apparent, is what allows for both the miraculous and scientific interpretations. And it is precisely this gray area that makes the Eutychus episode one of the most debated and fascinating in biblical history, inviting dialogue between faith and reason. The episode of Eutychus, with its dramatic charge and surprising outcome, emerges as an extraordinarily fertile ground for the complex and often fascinating dialogue between faith and science. These two great lenses through which humanity seeks to understand the world, though distinct in their methodologies and presupposition, do not necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. They can, in fact, offer complementary and enriching insights into the same event, without necessarily contradicting each other, but rather deepening understanding at different levels. For the perspective of faith, the event of Eutychus is a irrefutable testimony to the supernatural power of God operating directly through the Apostle Paul. It is seen as a clear and powerful demonstration of divine capacity to transcend the natural laws that govern our universe. The resurrection of a dead person, in this sense, is not just an isolated miracle, but a profound reaffirmation of God's sovereignty over life and death. This serves as a pillar for strengthening faith within the Christian community, and an undeniable sign of the authenticity and authority of the apostolic message. From this viewpoint, seeking a rational or scientific explanation would be seen as an attempt to distort or diminish the supernatural and miraculous nature of the event. For believers, Eutychus' life was restored by direct, supernatural divine intervention, an act of power that defies all human logic. On the other hand, the scientific perspective seeks to understand the phenomenon of Eutychus within the limits of human knowledge and observable natural laws. The hypothesis that Eutychus was in a state of apparent death and that Paul, through some intuitive or providential means, performed a primitive form of resuscitation does not necessarily imply a denial of divine intervention. On the contrary, many theologians and scientists who seek this bridge argue that God can act through natural means, meaning that divine providence can manifest in ways that, while appearing natural to science, are divinely orchestrated. God could have inspired Paul with the instinctive knowledge or the precise action that led to Eutychus' rescue. In this scenario, the miracle would not be the violation of natural laws, but the perfect confluence of circumstances, Paul's timely response, and divinely guided intuition that resulted in the young man's restoration. The choice of Luke, a physician by training, to narrate the event is often cited as an indication that the author was attentive to details. That could also be interpreted from a more earthly or clinically plausible perspective, without, however, diminishing the glory attributed to God for his action. The true richness of the Eutychus episode lies precisely in the possibility that both domains, the spiritual and the material, can coexist and enrich understanding. Faith invites us to believe in what transcends reason. In the power of the impossible, science challenges us to understand what is observable and replicable. The case of Eutychus allows these two perspectives to meet, enabling each individual to find the meaning that resonates most deeply with their own convictions, without one perspective necessarily nullifying the other. It is in the tension between the inexplicable and the plausible, between miracle and resuscitation, that Eutychus' story remains so relevant and intriguing, inviting continuous dialogue between different forms of knowing. For a deeper understanding of Eutychus' case, it's crucial to delve into the concept of apparent death, a condition widely recognized in modern medicine that can mimic actual death. This simulation is particularly dangerous in scenarios lacking the advanced technology we possess today, such as electrocardiograms, pulse oximetry, imaging scans, and vital sign monitors. In the past, the absence of detectable breathing and heartbeats by sight or touch was readily interpreted as death. Several medical conditions can lead to a state of apparent death. Catalepsy, for instance, is a disorder where the body becomes rigid, muscles contract, and vital signs like breathing and heart rate become so slow and imperceptible that the individual can be mistakenly considered dead. This can be triggered by certain neurological conditions, some types of poisoning, or even extreme psychological stress, leading to a state of catatonic shock. Syncopes, or profound fainting spells, especially those of vasovagal origin, are another example, caused by an exaggerated response of the nervous system to stimuli like excessive heat. Intense pain, strong emotions, or prolonged standing, syncopes can lead to sudden loss of consciousness and a drastic decrease in vital signs. The pulse might become weak and breathing shallow, confusing untrained observers. Other conditions include severe hypothermia, where body temperature drops dramatically, slowing all vital functions to the point of making them undetectable without specific equipment. Additionally, some forms of shock, hypovolemic from fluid loss, cardiogenic from heart failure, or neurogenic from nervous system injury, prolonged seizures that induce a post-ictal coma, or episodes of severe hypoglycemia can also mimic death. In Eutychus' specific case, the combination of factors is extraordinarily relevant. The stuffy and oxygen-depleted environment, due to the many lamps and overcrowding of the upper room, may have induced hypoxia, leading to drowsiness, dizziness, and eventually, loss of consciousness. Exhaustion from staying up late, listening to the sermon, contributed to his vulnerability. And, of course, the most dramatic factor, the fall from the third story. Such as a concussion or a neurogenic shock, where the autonomic nervous system fails to regulate blood pressure and heart rate, leading to a critical decrease in vital signs. Any of these conditions, isolated or combined, could have led Eutychus into a deep coma or prolonged syncope, where breathing and pulse would be so faint and irregular as to be undetectable without modern instruments. The lack of sophisticated medical knowledge in Paul's time meant that the absence of movement, visible breathing, and palpable pulse was synonymous with death by the standards of that era. Paul's intervention, therefore, even if not a resurrection in the sense of bringing someone back from the realm of the dead, could have been an instinctive resuscitation maneuver. The actions of falling upon him and embracing him can be interpreted as chest compressions, or even applying pressure to the abdomen to force air out of the lungs, or simply vigorous physical stimulation that could shock the body back to consciousness and restore vital functions. In a state of apparent death, a quick and decisive intervention like this could, in fact, have restored circulation and breathing, saving the young man's life. It is the ambiguity of this death, whether it was definitively biological or merely a profound suspension of vital functions, that invites us to consider both the faith interpretation and the scientific explanation, making the Eutychus episode one of the richest for studying the intersection between the sacred and the secular. The case of Eutychus, in its singularity and ambiguity, confronts us profoundly and universally with the inherent limits of our own understanding of life, death, and the universe. Regardless of the interpretation one adopts, the episode serves as a mirror reflecting the boundaries of our knowledge and the vastness of what remains unknown to us. If we embrace the interpretation that it was a genuine miracle, a direct supernatural intervention, we are led to a reflection on the existence of a power that transcends our material reality. This power, whether divine or of another nature not yet understood, would it have the capacity to intervene directly in the course of nature, suspending or rewriting its physical laws. This invites us to question to what extent our physical laws are absolute and immutable, or if there are dimensions and forces that operate beyond our scope of perception and measurement. The miracle reminds us that the universe may hold secrets that defy our most advanced logic, inspiring humility before what is considered sacred and inexplicable. Belief in such an event not only strengthens faith in God's ability to perform the impossible, but also maintains a deep sense of wonder and reverence for what lies beyond human grasp. If, on the other hand, we adopt the perspective that it was a successful resuscitation, a form of intuitive or inspired first aid, the episode leads used to a profound admiration for human intuition and the capacity for observation and response that, even without modern scientific and technological frameworks, could save lives. This interpretation invites us to reflect on the existence of intuitive or empirical knowledge that may have been more widespread in past eras, where careful observation and immediate response, based on experience, could resemble modern medical practices even before the formalization of science. This view, far from diminishing the event, highlights the remarkable human capacity for adaptation, empirical sagacity, and the providence that can guide seemingly simple actions to extraordinary results. It also opens a field for reflection on how modern science, by unraveling the complex mechanisms of the human body, reveals the intricate beauty of life and the delicate balance of its equilibrium, making every recovery a true wonder of physiology. Ultimately, the central mystery surrounding Eutychus is not whether he came back to life, as the biblical text is categorical about his return. The fundamental question is how he came back. Eutychus' story, therefore, transcends a mere ancient narrative. It is a perennial invitation to embrace ambiguity, to recognize that not all questions have easy answers, and that the true beauty of certain accounts lies precisely in their ability to make us think critically, to inspire us to look beyond the obvious, and to consider the infinite possibilities that life, faith, and the universe itself present to us. What does this episode reveal about our perception of reality, and what perhaps may still completely transcend our understanding? This is the final resonant question that the Eutychus case leaves us with. Divine miracle or the first recorded successful resuscitation? The case of Eutychus continues to challenge the boundaries between the inexplicable and the logically comprehensible. This ancient story invites us to question, how far can faith extend, and where does science begin to unravel the mysteries of existence?